Breaking news: that sweeping fallout from President Trump's executive order on refugees and immigration. Tonight, there is chaos, confusion, and fear.
This is what democracy looks like.
The backlash appears to have begun. Here at JFK's Terminal 4 in New York City, a crowd of around 600 people has gathered. They're very loud. They're chanting, "Hey, hey, ho, ho." The Muslim ban has got to go, and they're carrying banners that read things like, "Let them in," and "Islam is not the enemy." Human rights organization says the ban presents a constitutional crisis, particularly the administration's preference for one particular religion, Christianity.
At one point, the crowd tried to get inside, but police in riot gear managed to keep them at bay. Port Authority police even blocked access to the air train at JFK because of what they called overcrowding. But Governor Cuomo ordered them to reopen it to protesters, saying, quote, "The people of New York will have their voices heard." Even this normally busy taxi stand was empty because drivers stopped picking up passengers in solidarity with the protesters and the refugees.
It's not a Muslim ban, but we were totally prepared. It's working out very nicely. You see it at the airports. You see it all over. It's working out very nicely. And we're going to have a very, very strict ban, and we're going to have extreme vetting, which we should have had in this country for many years.
But protesters outside federal court in Brooklyn cheered when a judge put a temporary injunction in place late Saturday night.
We're going to go see each of the people, provide counsel, try and get them out of detention right now, but at a minimum, they will not be returned back to danger.
There are dozens of police officers here trying to keep order and allow travelers to do their regular business. Late tonight, a senior official at the Department of Homeland Security confirmed there were about 375 travelers affected by this new policy today. Most of them were not allowed to board planes in their home countries, but we're told 109 were detained at airports around the U.S. when they arrived here. Some of them were screened and released, like the two here at JFK. Some were sent back home before the judge's ruling tonight, and others are now just stuck in legal limbo. We'll see what happens tomorrow.
The United Nations has called on Trump to change his stance. In a joint statement, the UN Refugee Agency and the International Organization for Migration urged Trump to ensure equal treatment for all, regardless of race, nationality, and/or religion. The American Civil Liberties Union called the action a euphemism for discrimination against Muslims. It says the executive order is against constitutional principles. The Council on American Islamic Relations has filed a lawsuit against the order that it believes clearly targets Muslims. Prominent Democrats have also blasted the move. Well, France and Germany have joined a growing course of criticism of U.S. President Donald Trump's executive order on immigration.
Welcoming refugees who flee war and oppression is part of our duty. We must ensure it happens in a fair, correct way and also in solidarity, and ensuring the way we do it. That's why European dialogue and European solidarity must continue to play a role, and clearly play a role, and that each nation must play its part.
Europe is being urged to stand firm in the face of rhetoric coming from the new US president. The French president says EU member states should remain steadfast whenever Donald Trump urges them to follow the UK's decision to split with Brussels. This, François Hollande says, is Trump trying to undermine the integrity of the EU. François Hollande's comments come after Donald Trump signed an executive order on Friday, making major changes to US policies on refugees and immigration. The leaders of Greece, France, Italy, Spain, Malta and Cyprus are in Lisbon to discuss the challenges facing them.
Berlin was once the site of one of the world's most famous walls.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Now its mayor is warning President Donald Trump not to build one along the U.S. southern border. Mayor Michael Mueller said in an open letter, "We Berliners know better than most the pain caused when a whole continent is split by barbed wire and walls. I call on the President of the USA not to go down that road to isolation and ostracism." Berlin was split in two after the end of the Second World War. The Berlin Wall was built in 1961 to stop defectors from leaving Soviet-controlled East Berlin for the more prosperous West Berlin. It was eventually demolished in 1989.
Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has a message for refugees rejected by United States President Donald Trump. Canada welcomes you. He said he intends to talk to Mr. Trump about the success of Canada's refugee policy as well. Trudeau reacted to Trump's visa ban for people from certain Muslim-majority countries by tweeting, saying that Canada will welcome people fleeing persecution regardless of their faith. The Prime Minister has refrained from criticizing Trump to avoid offending the new U.S. president. More than 75% of Canada's exports go to the United States.
Iran says it's going to ban all U.S. citizens from entering the country. It's a response to the Trump administration's ban on people coming to the U.S. from 7 Muslim-majority nations, including Iran. The ban, part of an executive order signed by President Donald Trump on Friday, bars people from coming to the U.S. for the next 90 days if they're from Iraq, Iran, Syria, Libya, Somalia, Yemen, or Sudan. Iranians have been barred from entering the U.S. before. President Jimmy Carter blocked them from getting visas during the Iran hostage crisis. A statement from the Iranian Foreign Ministry said, in part, the U.S. ban is, quote, an obvious insult to the Islamic world and in particular to the great nation of Iran. But the two-way ban complicates an already complex relationship between the two countries. President Trump has scrutinized the Iran nuclear deal the Obama administration negotiated. But just days before Trump's inauguration, Iranian President Hassan Rouhani said there was little chance the deal would be renegotiated. There's no word on how long Iran's ban on the U.S. will last or what the terms will be.
Well, now we turn to the White House, where the president had a full day of phone calls and calling the shots. Errol Barnett is there.
This administration has hit the ground running at a record pace. Everybody's talking about it.
Delivering his first weekly address, President Trump defended more than a dozen executive actions from his first week in the White House.
Every day, we are fulfilling the promise we made to the American people.
The president also signed 2 memorandums and an executive order Saturday.
That I've been talking about a lot on the campaign trail, and we are now putting it into effect.
The order is a 5-year post-White House lobbying ban for administration officials, banning them indefinitely from lobbying for foreign governments. The 2 memos streamline the National Security Council's structure to address cyber warfare and establish a 30-day deadline for the Joint Chiefs of Staff to draft a plan to defeat ISIS.
Okay, that's big stuff.
Mr. Trump started his day firing off several tweets from his personal account to what he calls the failing New York Times, the newspaper responding by noting subscriptions are at an all-time high. The president was more diplomatic in his one-on-one phone calls with world leaders. First, a conversation with Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, who will visit the White House next month. That was followed by calls with German Chancellor Angela Merkel, French President Francois Hollande, and Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull.
Vladimirovich Putin.
But it is Mr. Trump's conversation with Russian President Vladimir Putin which could signal the biggest change in U.S. foreign policy.
Well, Andrew, President Trump was scheduled to speak to 5 world leaders today, but his phone call with President Putin was undoubtedly the most anticipated one, and some would even argue the most important one. And it's fair to say that the phone call and the 2 leaders, well, they did not disappoint, as they vowed to work closely together and on a personal level to reboot Russian-U.S. ties, which have hit an all-time low under the previous administration. And the 2 leaders are expressing their willingness to do that, starting with Syria. Well, Trump was quoted as saying that he supports improving the real cooperation between Moscow and Washington to defeat ISIS and other terrorist groups in Syria. Here's how he put it earlier.
If we have a great relationship with Russia and other countries, and if we go after ISIS together, which has to be stopped, that's an evil that has to be stopped, I will consider that a good thing, not a bad thing.
We've also been reading reports that Trump will very soon sign an executive order to get his team to come up with a strategy to defeat ISIS within 30 days. Of course, it's too early now to guess what will be included in his strategy. But a few days ago, Trump did suggest setting up safe zones in Syria to help the people there. Here.
As president, I'll absolutely do safe zones in Syria for the people. I think that Europe has made a tremendous mistake by allowing these millions of people to go into Germany and various other countries. And all you have to do is take a look. It's a disaster what's happening over there.
Well, judging on that soundbite, it may sound like setting up safe zones is a good idea. But what Trump did not elaborate on is that it may lead to an escalation of American military involvement in the Syrian conflict, as safe zones would mean that there will be isolated territories set up within Syria but under U.S. control. Russia has also been vocal against this idea, as it may pave the way towards a U.S. intervention in the war-torn country. Now, Russia, so it really will be interesting to see how this cooperation between the U.S. and Russia will pan out. But judging on this phone call, while it seems like the two leaders are quite optimistic about it.
After wrapping her maiden U.S. visit, British Prime Minister landed in Ankara to meet leaders of another close ally. Theresa May first met President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, and the statement after that meeting indicated that a major deal was about to be announced.
We discussed what possible steps we could take in the defense industry, and I believe that we will be able to take our relationship to a new level.
And that was the highlight of May's visit, the announcement of a new defense deal between Turkish Aerospace Industries and BAE Systems. A $125 million agreement establishing a partnership to develop Turkey's next-generation fighter jets.
This partnership will help Turkey as it grapples with the threat posed by heightened terrorist attacks in this country. We should never forget that in the last 18 months, over 1,500 Turkish civilians and security personnel have been killed by terrorist attacks.
This deal is just the first step in establishing new trade deals as the UK prepares to leave the European Union. And it raised hopes that by the time Britain leaves the 28-nation bloc, Turkey will cement its position as a strong trading partner. Theresa May leaves Turkey with a message that the two countries, which share a 400-year past, are more determined than ever before to increase cooperation. A time where regional dynamics, such as the UK preparing to leave the European Union and the fight against terror groups like Daesh, the PKK, and FETÖ, are dominating trade and security issues.
Syrian forces have entered a town northwest of the capital and took control of a key spring which supplies most of the capital's water. The Syrian army entered the town of Ain al-Fija in Barada Valley as part of a deal with foreign-backed militants. Reports say that the army is not yet in full control of the whole facility. Under the agreements, militants will be evacuated from the area. The spring had been earlier contaminated by militants, leaving millions of Syrians in the capital and the surrounding areas without clean water. Nusra terrorists have controlled villages in the area since November 2013, and they have been disrupting water supplies to the capital.
A U.S. think tank claims the Democratic People's Republic of Korea has resumed operation of a reactor at its main nuclear site used to produce plutonium, a radioactive element used to make nuclear energy. Now, the think tank said Friday that satellite imagery indicated DPRK forces at the site had unloaded spent fuel rods for additional plutonium for nuclear weapons. The nuclear facilities are located in Yongbyon, about 60 miles north of Pyongyang, and have been used to produce fissile materials for the DPRK's weapon programs since 2006. Now, Pyongyang last week reported operations at the reactor had been suspended since late 2015. However, the imagery released by Washington is causing concern that tension between the two sides could become a major crisis for the new U.S. administration under President Donald Trump.
There is the Survival Condo Project, a 15-story luxury apartment complex built in a Kansas former nuclear missile silo. And for $3 million, you could have had a full-floor private apartment. It was designed years ago by the Army Corps of Engineers, not as a residence, but after taking into consideration the height above sea level, seismology, and proximity to population centers. I say could have had because they're sold out. Larry, what amenities in that bunker?
Well, it's like a miniature cruise ship, Michael. It has everything from a rock climbing wall and a game arcade for the kids to continuing education classrooms, a library, a movie theater, a bar and lounge. It's got everything that you need to spread out and maintain some semblance of normal when things outside are anything but normal.
Do your purchasers come and hang out, or are they only coming there in a worst-case scenario?
Well, originally, when they purchased it, they believed that they were only going to come out when there was some catastrophe somewhere. But after they saw the level of finishes and the variety of things to do, they've started coming out regularly. Most of them come out between 2 or even 3 times a year and spend a week or two to get away from the hustle and bustle of the city and feel in a very safe environment.
If everything hits the fan and I am one of your owners, how am I getting to Kansas?
Well, you're getting to Kansas probably by driving or flying. Most of our clients have a 3-plan type of thing. They also have purchased extended range armor vehicles. These people have vehicles that have a range of up to 2,500 miles without having to stop for fuel, and they're armored and they're bulletproof. So if it takes them 2 days to drive and they have to stop, they can get here without having to worry about a fuel supply.
Next to the medical headline causing concern, the CDC declaring there is a growing flu epidemic, and we are not even in peak season yet. Here's ABC's Jim Avila.
Americans are suffering from the flu tonight in epidemic numbers across 37 states. Mid-January saw 3 children die from influenza. 10 states, from Alabama and Georgia in the south to Kansas and Oklahoma in the Midwest to New Jersey and New York City in the east, reporting high-level flu activity. Doctors advising a flu shot as soon as possible and before illness hits your family. And this year, a shot is recommended, not the nasal spray mist. Hospitals in Washington state report they're running short of beds as the flu rapidly spreads during the height of influenza season.
The government of China issued a new plan on Wednesday that attempts to address a new problem, demographic disparity. Thanks to China's former one-child policy, a law that was eased in 2016 to allow couples to have 2 children, they're set to expect some imbalances in demographics between now and 2030. The report says the aging of the population will accelerate by that time, leaving a quarter of the population in the world's largest country too old to work and not enough working-age people to sustain their Social Security and other benefits. Some experts are now saying China's new demographic problems are a result of its attempt at population control through the one-child policy. China's government has a daunting cultural challenge ahead to get families to have more babies while not overstretching their resources.
I want to say thank you for being here with us this morning. We are here to announce that we've introduced Senate Bill 179. The Gender Recognition Act of 2017. This bill will enable more transgender, intersex, and non-binary Californians to obtain state-issued identity documents that accurately reflect their gender. California is a national leader on LGBTQ rights. The Gender Recognition Act is the next big step down a path that all others eventually will follow.
To Peru now, which remains in a state of emergency after 2 days of heavy flooding. At least 4 people have been killed, including 3 passengers in a car caught in a mudslide. The high waters have also displaced more than 11,000 families. Rain has caused flooding in neighboring Bolivia and Chile.
Eruption of the Kilauea volcano has put on a spectacular display of smoke and fire in Hawaii. The volcano is spewing fresh lava, with experts saying the flow has now covered around half a kilometer. Officials say the vent of the flow is very active and that the lava is moving in a continuous path towards the Pacific Ocean inside the Hawaii Volcanoes National Park. Once the molten lava comes into contact with the ocean, an explosion reaction or explosive reaction occurs that can send debris flying.
I pledge allegiance to the flag.
All the students at Franklin Elementary start every day with a pledge.
Indivisible.
But the Justice for All part belongs to 5 fifth-grade boys.
Why pick on someone who has special needs? Yeah.
They're talking about James Wilmert.
Who
learns a little differently than most of the other 5th graders.
Coins. They're like using them.
Which, it turns out,
and taking advantage of them.
can get a guy teased.
Point, because he's easier to pick on, and it's just not right.
Which is why Gus, Tyler, Landon, Jake, and Jack decided this year to have James's back.
It really kind of makes you proud to be their teacher.
Mallory Hauk says the school's anti-bullying lessons must have struck a chord.
Landon!
But this has gone beyond even her expectations.
Thank you.
James's mom's, too.
He used to not want to go out for recess or anything. It would be like a struggle. And now he can barely eat his lunch to get outside to play with those guys.
Play and learn.
He has a notebook with over 600 teams of college. Gustavus Adolphus. That's how much he likes sports. Nebraska.
They learned, too, that James was adopted from an orphanage in Colombia, and that 6 years later he lost his new father in a bicycle accident.
And we just got a basketball hoop last week because he now loves basketball. I mean, they're changing him.
And they're still not done.
We're like, do you have any sports games? And he was like, no, I don't have any video game systems. So that's when I came up with the idea.
With some of their own money and some from their parents, the boys recently delivered to James video games and a new PlayStation.
Every one of them was smiling like crazy.
The first time friends had ever come to play with James.
I'll never forget it. Never.
Jack, what? You tie my shoe. Yep.
Indivisible.
He's an awesome kid to hang out with. You're too fast! MVP! Let's go, James! Let's go! All of these guys are the best friends anybody could ask for.
No Franklin fifth grade friends have ever pledged allegiance like the James gang.
It's my 12th touchdown. I love you guys.